Before any settlers leave England and head out to America to start a new life, there were some important changes that were happening in England. These were economic and religious changes, and they helped pave the way and motivate some English to make the big time move across the ocean to a new land called America. Now, the changes we're going to talk about, I want to talk first of the economic changes, followed by the religious changes. As far as the economic changes, before the 1500s, most of the land in England was owned by nobles. Tenant farmers, they rented and they worked the land for these nobles. So essentially, the idea of property rights really wasn't much of an issue. If you lived in England in the 1500s, or before the 1500s, you probably wouldn't have your own piece of land. Instead, you would rent the land, you would work it for somebody else, and then you would make your living that way. In the 1500s, a large demand for wool really changes all of this. It caused the nobles to fence their land in. All this land that used to be farmland, they decided to fence the land so they could convert their farmland into sheep farms, essentially, to raise sheep so they could produce and sell more wool. Tenant farmers, there wasn't a need for them now. You don't need that many tenant farmers, so they are evicted off the land. And unable to farm for a living, many of these tenant farmers, they go into nearby cities and into crowded nearby cities. This results in overcrowding, and the farmers then begin to look for other options. Those are the economic changes. Now, the religious changes, most of Western Europe was Catholic at the time of Christopher Columbus. This was the Christian church. Now, the idea that you could open up any yellow pages in any, or look at a directory in any city, and you'll find a lot of different Christian churches to go to. That was not the case at the time of Columbus. If you were a Christian, there was a single church, and it was called the Catholic Church. This changes in 1517. There's a German priest, his name is, a German monk, excuse me, his name was Martin Luther, and he decides to break away from the Catholic Church. He has some issues with the Catholic Church. He thinks that they're not doing things properly, and so he breaks away. He's kicked out of the church, and he begins his own religion based on Christian principles. He doesn't know what to call it, so they call themselves Lutherans after Martin Luther. He founds the Lutheran Church, and this is known as the first Protestant, or it comes from the word protesting, the first Protestant Christian church. Now, about 10 years after this time, in 1527, the King of England, Henry VIII, he asked the Catholic Church for a divorce. Now, the Catholic Church, even today, has a strong stance on divorce, and they said, no, you can't have a divorce. He wanted to have boys, and all he was able to was have girls with his current wife, and he wanted to have a boy. Now, King Henry thought, hey, as a king, ultimately, he doesn't need to ask permission to do anything. He was the King of England, after all. So Henry decides that the way to overcome this is to create his own church. He's going to call his, doesn't use a lot of imagination, but he calls it the Church of England. It becomes the official Church of England. It's also known as the Anglican Church. Now, this break with the Catholic Church really was less about religious practices, but more about King Henry wanting to have more control in his country. This way he wouldn't need to answer to anybody as far as to make any laws or about issues of religion. He wouldn't have to answer to anybody now. These new economic and religious changes really helped set up the conditions that would encourage some English citizens to think, hey, you know what, they can have a better life if they want to go to the new land called America.